There's a street on the edge of town, a quiet suburban cul-de-sac with houses that look nearly identical. Every lawn is trimmed the same height. Every driveway is pressure-washed every Saturday morning. Every hedge is sculpted, shaped, and maintained like a polished trophy. This is a place where people don't just live, they perform. The kind of neighborhood where image is everything. Children ride bikes in straight lines. Dogs walk only on leashes with matching collars. Even the mailboxes follow code. Same height, same color, same polished shine. It is a place of uniformity. A place where standing out is considered inappropriate. And yet, at the very end of the street, where the cul-de-sac curves and begins to blend into open fields and sky, there is one home that is unmistakably different. A tiny wooden cabin. No siding, no stone accents. Just natural, weathered cedar boards, aged softly by the sun. It doesn't try to impress. It doesn't try to fit in. It simply exists. This small home belongs to Mr. Samuel Reed, a man of quiet presence. Silver hair, trimmed short, shoulders straight, not from pride, but from discipline. Movements deliberate, controlled, thoughtful. He speaks little, listens much, watches everything, yet judges nothing. Every morning, just after sunrise, he steps outside with a cup of coffee and stands on his porch, looking out toward the open field behind his house. Not the street, not the neighbors, not the houses surrounding him, but the space beyond, the horizon, as though the horizon has been a companion for a very long time. But the rest of the neighborhood, they don't see a peaceful man. They don't see wisdom or experience or intention. They see a tiny house. And to them, that is enough reason to look down. They whisper when he walks by, "He must have run out of money." Nobody builds a shack in a neighborhood like this unless they're hiding something. Maybe he's one of those survivalist types, weird. They whisper, but loud enough for him to hear, because cruelty rarely whispers quietly. The center of all this judgment is Mrs. Evelyn Carter, the HOA president. Evelyn is proud of three things. 1, her immaculate lawn. 2, her position of authority. 3, and the sound of her own voice. She walks the neighborhood the way a general surveys troops, measuring, evaluating, correcting. To her, the neighborhood is a reflection of her control. And Samuel Reed? He is a blemish, a wrong color in the palette, a note out of tune, a reminder that she does not control everything, and that she cannot tolerate. One warm afternoon, when the sun hung heavy and the cicadas hummed a steady drone in the trees, Mrs. Carter marched toward the tiny house. Clip, clop, clip, clop, her heels striking pavement like a countdown. She carried with her a clipboard, and on that clipboard was a stack of violation notices. She pressed her lips into something resembling a smile when Mr. Reed opened the door. "Good afternoon, Mr. Reed." He nodded politely. "Good afternoon." She did not step back. She did not soften. "I'm here regarding your structure." He listened, hands folded behind his back, posture precise. This residence does not meet neighborhood development standards. The size, the materials, the lack of architectural conformity. Well, it simply does not align with the expected quality of this community. She expected defensiveness, excuses, embarrassment. Instead, Mr. Reed simply looked at his home, then at the vast, calm field behind it, then back to her. And he smiled, a real smile, soft, warm, almost knowing. "Thank you for informing me. But this home is exactly what I intended. I'll be remaining here." Her eyes sharpened. "That isn't how this works. You'll need to comply." He nodded respectfully. "I understand your position, and I appreciate it, but I will be staying." Something about his tone unsettled her. Not defiant, not timid, just certain. She narrowed her eyes. "We'll see about that." And she turned, heels striking the sidewalk like punctuation marks. Clip, clop, clip, clop. Word travels fast in neighborhoods like this. The morning after Mrs. Carter's visit, whispers spread faster than sunlight across the lawns. At first, it was just gossip. He's refusing to comply with the HOA. He thinks he's special. He's too proud to admit he's living in a shack. But gossip turned into judgment. Judgment turned into resentment. And resentment, when left alone, turns into cruelty. Soon, neighbors began to test him. One man pretended not to see him and let his dog relieve itself on Reed's lawn. A group of teenage boys laughed as they rode past, chanting, "Tiny house, tiny life." Someone even left a pink eviction notice on his porch. Not real, just a joke, with the words, "Do your neighborhood a favor and leave." But Mr. Reed said nothing, did nothing, changed nothing. His silence infuriated them, because nothing threatens insecure people more than someone who refuses to acknowledge their attempts at humiliation. Mrs. Carter, meanwhile, escalated her efforts. She began filing formal complaints with zoning boards. She requested mandatory architectural inspections. She even contacted the city council, all in the name of protecting neighborhood standards. But in truth, she just couldn't stand that he didn't fear her. Meanwhile, inside his small wooden home, Mr. Reed lived simply. One room for sleeping, one room for cooking, a small shelf of books, worn and annotated, well-loved, a chessboard on the table, pieces mid-game, as if he were playing against time itself. On the wall hung no photos, no family portraits, no certificates, just one framed item, a single naval commendation medal, not flashy, not gold, but honored. Outside, behind the house, the open field stretched wide, as if it were waiting for something. Or, perhaps, waiting to reveal something. Many years earlier, Samuel Reed had commanded fleets. He had stood on the decks of aircraft carriers, faced down storms bigger than cities, and given orders that changed the course of nations. He had seen bravery. He had seen fear. He had seen men become legends, and legends fall like sand into the sea. But what scarred him most was not battle. It was noise, the endless clamor of decisions, demands, urgency, the pressure of millions depending on him. When he retired, he didn't want marble floors, or a mansion, or attention. He wanted quiet. He wanted space large enough only for peace. So he built his tiny house, not because he lacked money, but because he finally understood what enough felt like. One morning, as Reed was tending to his small garden, he heard voices, loud ones. Mrs. Carter had gathered neighbors on the sidewalk, clipboards, folded arms, furrowed brows. A petition. They were planning to force him out. They spoke as if he were not even present. "It's ruining the neighborhood's image. He doesn't belong here. We can't have standards slipping." Reed simply looked up, calm, silent. One neighbor stepped forward, a man who drove a polished Lexus and spent weekends bragging about his investments. He smirked. "Look, Reed, it's nothing personal. This is just a neighborhood for people who work hard." Reed held his gaze, and in the quietest, softest voice, he said, "Son, you don't know the first thing about hard work." The street fell silent, because something in his tone carried weight. Weight that came from oceans, from orders, from lives. And Mrs. Carter, flustered, shot back, "Well, you'll have to learn respect for authority." Reed raised an eyebrow. Just one. It was the kind of expression that says, "You made a very, very large mistake." But again, he said nothing. He went back to tending his garden. And that, to the neighborhood, felt like a declaration. This is where the story begins to turn. The silence before the reveal. Several days passed. No more petitions. No more confrontations. Just waiting. The air in the neighborhood felt tight, as if everyone expected something to happen. And then, on a still Saturday morning, just after dawn, the ground began to tremble. At first, faint, barely noticeable, but then stronger, steady, controlled. Not a car, not construction. Rotors. A deep, thundering whump, 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 whump rolled across the sky. People stepped outside. Coffee cups paused halfway to lips. Conversations froze mid-sentence. They looked up and saw it, a matte black military helicopter descending slowly, directly toward the tiny house at the end of the street. Wind whipped through the neighborhood. Bushes flattened. Hats flew. Children grabbed their parents. The helicopter hovered, angled, and then lowered itself with precision into Mr. Reed's wide, open backyard, almost like that backyard had been designed for landings. The door slid open. Two high-ranking naval officers stepped out. Not soldiers, not pilots. Command authority. Shoulders squared, medals polished, faces stern. They walked in perfect formation to the front of the small cabin. Neighbors watched from porches, from behind curtains. From driveways, they suddenly stopped pretending to clean. Silence spread across the entire street. The officers stopped in front of Mr. Reed's door. One knocked. Once. The door opened, and there stood Mr. Samuel Reed, not in gardening clothes, not in jeans, not in a quiet man's stillness, but in full naval dress uniform, decorations lined and quiet, heavy rows across his chest. Not loud, not flashy, but the kind of honors that are earned. Blood earned, duty earned, history earned. The officer snapped a salute so sharply the sound itself felt like thunder. Admiral Reed, the Defense Council is assembled. Your presence is requested in Washington. Gasps, whispers, hands over mouths. Admiral, not Mr., not retiree, not lonely man in a small house. A man who had commanded fleets. A man who had been responsible for lives in the tens of thousands. A man the world respected, while the neighborhood mocked. Mrs. Carter stepped forward, voice trembling. We didn't know. Reed turned to face her. Not angry, not triumphant, just truthful. You need to know. He looked around at the neighbors, at their polished houses, perfect lawns, and small, fearful eyes. You judge what you could see. But what matters is what you never bothered to ask. He let the words settle, like anchors dropping deep into the ocean. Then he continued. Peace is small, not loud, not decorated. He glanced at his tiny home. This house is enough for a man who has already seen too much. No one spoke, not a breath, not a whisper. The world had gone still. The officers stepped back, waiting. Reed nodded once, a commander's nod, and began walking toward the helicopter. Wind roared again. Grass whipped sideways. The neighborhood watched, humbled, silent, tiny. Just before stepping aboard, he paused, turned, looked directly at Mrs. Carter. The size of a home does not measure the size of a life. And with that, he boarded. The door slid closed. The helicopter rose, slowly, majestically, then broke upward into the open sky. The wind faded. The street stilled. No one laughed at his house again. Never underestimate the quiet ones. The world often mistakes silence for weakness. But silence is where storms gather, where battles are remembered, not spoken, where strength is shaped, not shown. Some people don't display their victories on walls or wear their stories on their sleeves. They carry them deep in the quiet corners of their hearts, where memory sits like an old friend. The loud ones want to be seen. The quiet ones have already seen enough. They've stood in rooms where decisions move nations. They've walked through fire so others wouldn't have to. They've lost things they will never mention, and survived things they will never describe. So when you meet someone who lives simply, doesn't brag, avoids attention, and chooses peace over pride, understand this. It is not because they have nothing. It is because they have already earned everything that matters. Never underestimate the quiet ones. Their stories are carved in places you cannot see, and in depths you will never reach.